I'm Melissa Butler, founder and CEO of The Lit Bar, and this is workshop number 3 of 8. Every Thursday until April 1st, we'll have a new workshop about different facets of being a small business owner. Today, we'll be talking all about the science of profitability, growth, and scaling. But there's also lots of content on Magenta Edge. To see additional info or to register for any upcoming workshops, just go to tmobile.com/Magenta Edge. Today, T-Mobile for Business will be live tweeting their thoughts, their responses, their reactions from this workshop. So if you want to join in, just make sure you click the Twitter icon on your dashboard. But without further ado, again, I am Melissa Butler, the founder and CEO of The Lit Bar. Like many of you, I started my company with the idea that I could make a difference in my industry, that I could make a difference in my community. But also similarly to many of you, I started my business with absolutely nothing. I started the company making lipstick in my kitchen when I was working on Wall Street. And since then, I've grown this company into a multi-million-dollar business, servicing large big box retailers like Target and Walmart. And in 2020, we had over 100,000 individual customers. And while all of that sounds glamorous, and I am in the beauty industry, I'm going to be honest, it's not easy. Entrepreneurship is one of those things that people romanticize right now. But every single day I experience some level of failure, some level of disappointment, something that resembles bad news. And so when I think about this, sure, it gets me down sometimes. But then I have to ask myself, and I hope you're asking yourself, well, why is she so damn happy? Like in all of these pictures, I have a smile from ear to ear. And my happiness stems from the idea that I was able to transition and completely change my business and increase my profitability by 900% in the last 12 months. I'm talking about I went from being in the absolute negative to being able to maintain 18% of my 2020 revenue. So I think that's reason to smile. And I'm excited because today I'll get to show you that you can do the same. So welcome to the science of driving profitability, scalability, and growth. Today for our agenda, we'll be talking about obviously profitability, but more specifically, we'll be talking about eliminating expenses, pricing your product properly. We'll also be talking about scaling. How do you hire? How do you invest in your future? How do you make sure that your company has a future? And then finally, growth. Growth from the perspective of the customer lifestyle or the life cycle, attracting new customers and keeping your old customers. Retention is the name of the game for any business, no matter what your industry is. So lesson 1, profits. A really interesting quote that I read a few years ago goes a little like, beware of little expenses. A small leak will sink even the greatest of ships. And it was really life-changing for me. It really made me think of my expenses as those small leaks, thinking of my expenses as every single unnecessary dollar that I spend within my business has the potential to sink my ship, or in other words, to sink my business. So it made me start thinking about every single dollar that I was spending and making sure that that dollar actually brought value back to the company. So let's get into it. What's impacting your profits? As a small business owner, what's the thing that's holding you back from profitability? And to be honest, it's not just small businesses. There are tons of big businesses that operate in the red every single year. But we don't want to do that. We want to be able to take home a little bit of our hard work. And to be honest, everything is actually impacting your profitability. But there are 3 essential expenses, 3 fundamental expenses that will impact you no matter what industry you're in, no matter what business you're in, no matter what your goals are. The first one is going to be your cost of goods sold or your cost of your service provided. And I'm gonna hammer on this a bit today because I want to make sure that you're understanding your true cost of doing business so that you can drive economies of scale, so that you can really understand how to drive profitability within your company. Within your cost of goods sold, there are always going to be fixed and variable expenses. And your job is to try to reduce your fixed expenses and to balance out and stabilize your variable expenses. Next up, people. I cannot stress this enough. People are literally your most valuable assets, but also they're your most expensive assets. So I want you to be really clear on who you're hiring, why you're hiring, the success of what that hire means to your company. And while you're deliberating on that, make sure that you're being slow to hire, but also fast to fire. I can tell you that is a lot harder to do than it is to say. Because oftentimes, like as a small business owner, you may not have the resources to hire that person who has all of the years of experience, or to hire that person who's really going to be that game changer. But also as a small business owner, you can't afford for someone to take up space and take up budget if they're not driving the value that you actually need. For example, I'll give you guys something really personal. In the past, I've hired friends and family, people who I've loved, and that has made the conversation of firing fast a lot more difficult. And part of the reason it was difficult is simply because I didn't have a clear and direct success plan for them. They didn't really know what success meant to them, and I didn't know what success meant to them. So it made that conversation a lot more difficult to say, hey, you're not performing, if they didn't have those performance benchmarks. So make sure that you're really clear on what success looks like, what the metrics you're tracking against, so that if people aren't performing, it's an easier conversation. My philosophy on people is that no one should ever be surprised if you're firing fast. They should know that it's absolutely not working. And then next up, marketing. Marketing. I think most people are most excited in small business about the idea of marketing. And, the reality is, without customers, you don't have a business. So your job is to attract new customers. Your job is to keep your current customers. Your job is to tell a story that's so compelling that's worth repeating. So these are going to be your 3 fundamental things that impact your profitability, no matter your industry, no matter your goals. And so knowing that these things are always going to be omnipresent, I want you to ask yourself a few questions. Number 1, as it relates to your cost of goods sold, make sure that every single cost is necessary in order to drive an impactful customer experience. When I first launched the Lip Bar, we used to ship all of our lipsticks in these like super cute little velvet bags. And we thought it was such an elevated experience for our customers. No one else in the industry was doing it. But then after doing a lot of research and really talking to our customers, we found that, that gift-like experience was valuable at the unboxing stage, but ultimately it was a useless element. It was something that people didn't necessarily want to throw away because it looked expensive and it was a nice to have, but also they didn't want to carry their makeup in it, and it was too small to carry anything else in it. And so honestly, we ended up having to do away with that expense because we understood that was having a negative impact on our cost of goods sold, and it wasn't necessarily having a positive experience on our customers. So do away with those unnecessary expenses and make sure you're questioning yourself along the way on if it's necessary. The next thing with people. So I already mentioned you want to make sure that you're hiring slow and firing fast, but the question to ask yourself as it relates to your people is, are all of your people creating value for your business? At the end of the day, again, driving those success metrics and really using the data to dictate what performance look like is going to be key in order to make sure that you're extracting your value from your staff members. And then finally, marketing. A lot of us are testing and learning right now. A lot of us are trying to figure out what's the one thing that's going to bring a new customer to our business. What's the one thing that's going to keep a customer within our business? So as you're testing and learning, I want to make sure that you are identifying each marketing cost and the potential benefit. So the question that you should be asking yourself is, have I actually charted the course of what success looks like for these marketing tactics? as a small business owner, oftentimes you don't have money to just waste on testing and learning within the marketing space. You expect that for every dollar spent, you at least get $1 back. You need a return on your investment. You need a return on your ad spend. So make sure that you're identifying the actual benefit that should be coming from that marketing expense and act accordingly. So those are 3 things that are impacting your profits from a baseline. The next thing that I find to be really interesting in terms of impacting profitability is pricing. Oftentimes, people do not have the right price for their business. So again, I told you all I'm going to hammer on your cost of goods sold. You have to fully understand the true cost of bringing your profit to the market. That includes all of these sneaky fees, shipping fees, import fees, export fees, etc., in order to properly price your business or your service. I'm going to tell you all a really quick story. When we first started importing products from overseas, because some of my products, like our packaging, is made in China, for instance, I thought that I had the best deal. I'm like, oh, I'm getting this customized packaging for a really great price. But what I didn't take into consideration was the variance in duties and taxes and tariffs. So while I got a good price on the actual component, I was hit with a massive bill on the back end for importing my items into the USA. So make sure you're watching out for those sneaky expenses that are going to ultimately impact your profitability. So how do you price your product for profit? The one thing that you're going to do, and what's funny is that I learn over time within business, a lot of those like childhood fundamentals come back into play. They come full circle. So when you're thinking about pricing your product for profitability, you're going to ask yourself the who, the what, the where, the when, the how. So more specifically, who is buying your product? Why are they buying your product? What value are they extracting out of exchanging money for goods with your businesses? Where are they buying your product? These are all going to be really fundamental things as it relates to deciding on the right price for profitability. A common mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make when pricing your product or service is just applying a standard markup to determine what your cost should be. That is a dated model that doesn't take in consideration how your customers perceive your product or the future of your company and how you look to grow. So some of the things that I would encourage you to think about when pricing your product is number 1. Again, what's that true cost of doing business? And instead of thinking about pricing your product from a standard markup perspective, I would challenge you to instead try to apply a standard profitability metric. My goal is 25%. I want to, at the top of the year, when I'm planning my budget, when I'm forecasting, when I'm thinking about, pricing a new product that's going to come onto the market or even hiring new people, I'm thinking about how do I maintain 25% profitability? Because if I have 25% profitability, that gives me opportunity to reinvest in people, to reinvest in marketing, to reinvest in all of those things that's going to allow me to achieve that scale. Next, you want to consider the competition. So competition is one of those hard things where it's like you don't want to study your competition. You don't want to follow your competition, but you absolutely need to be aware of what's happening and what's happening in the market so that you can understand how your business stacks up and if customers are going to be willing to part with their disposable income to spend their money with you. So when you look at the competition, you want to be really clear as to how your product or your service stacks up to the competition. Are they getting more value from your product at a lesser cost, or are they getting a higher quality at a higher cost? Really think about where you are within your competitive landscape. And then finally, you want to think about your positioning. Where do you want to take your business? Again, is this a direct-to-consumer product? Where are you selling your products? And again, what's the positioning as it relates to your competition? So if your positioning is luxury, then you want to make sure that you're pricing it at a rate that's going to allow for you to have slower sales. If you think about luxury versus the mass market, if you think about stores like Saks versus Target, for instance, Target is going to get a lot more volume throughout the year because they're serving the masses, whereas Saks is serving that luxury positioning. They're serving that luxury audience. So make sure that you're really clear on what your brand positioning is, and make sure that all of these things are taken into account when you're pricing your product for profitability. So there's no right way to there's no like direct formula for pricing your product, and there's no direct formula for even driving profitability. But I've basically put together a simple model that allows you to understand some of the basics of boosting your profitability. And it starts with sales. I mean, at the end of the day, you need sales in order to drive your profits. But from a sales perspective, the two ways to increase your profitability are, number one, you can either increase the number of units you're selling. You can do that by adding on more customers. You can do that with your current customers by getting them to purchase more. But at the end of the day, you want to increase the number of units sold, or the number of services you're providing. The second way is for you to increase your price. Now, if I wanted to just break this down really simply put, let's say you're selling pencils, and you're selling pencils for, let's call it 50 cents. And your goal is to make $2. Right now, you only have one customer, so you only have 50 cents in the bank, but your goal is to get to $2. You can either increase your number sold by saying, okay, well, I need to sell 4 pencils to get to that $2 mark, right? So I need to either find 3 more customers, or I need to get my one customer to buy 3 additional pencils to get to that $2 mark. Or alternatively, you can say, you know what? I didn't price my pencils properly. I shouldn't have sold them for 50 cents. I should have sold my pencils for $1 each. And so now going forward, I'm going to sell my pencils for $1. So instead of needing 4 customers at a cost of 50 cents each, now you only need 2 customers at a cost of $1. So those are 2 really clear and easy ways to increase profitability from a sales perspective. Next up, you want to consider your cost. There's no business without cost. And so there are 2 types of costs. The first is your variable cost, and your job is to reduce that variable cost. So again, I mentioned earlier that I was importing from China, and my shipping, my duties and my tariffs were variable costs. And every time I ship, it's going to be a little bit different depending on the weight. So variable just basically means that there is a change that's dictated by external factors. And so your job is to reduce that variable cost, or at least anticipate it. You want to anticipate it by trying to standardizing that process. So for instance, if I was shipping, I would say, okay, what time of the year should I be shipping to get the best rates? Who should I be shipping with? How much product do I need to ship to keep those costs a little bit more static? And then your next cost, of course, is your fixed cost. These things are like your cost of inventory, your cost of rent, things of that nature. So there are 2 ways. Really, it's one way to reduce your fixed costs. And I think the biggest way, and the way that I found to be most impactful, is by increasing my output. Now, increasing my output, if you're in a product-based business or even a service-based business, oftentimes you have the benefit of achieving price breaks based on your volume. So every single time I place an additional order, every single time I increase my order just a little bit, I'm renegotiating. And renegotiation is the name of the game to increase your output, but also reduce your fixed expenses in the meantime. So basically what this graph is showing is that your profit is going to be your sales minus your variable cost and your fixed cost. And ultimately, that's going to result in your profit. And your job along the way is to try to reduce your variable costs, to reduce your fixed expenses, to achieve the maximum amount of profitability. All right, let's go to the next lesson. Scaling. All right, so First of all, what is scaling? Scaling is this idea of taking your business from, this mom and pop startup to an enterprise business, to a business that has processes and systems that's going to help you operate efficiently, and really to take some of the pressure off of you as a CEO. I'm that person who used to wear all of the hats in the business, and I can tell you right now that that's not sustainable, and that is not how you grow. So as we think about scaling, the first thing is going to be hiring. Hiring is probably one of the most important things. A lot of entrepreneurs think that they need money to scale, and sometimes you do need money, but more than anything, you need the right people, you need the right ideas, and you need the right execution methods. So when you're thinking about scaling or growing your business, I want to make sure that number one, you are hiring for your weaknesses. Don't hire people who are the same as you. It's not going to benefit you. You're not going to have diversity of thought. So make sure you're really honest with yourself and vulnerable with your team, or even if your team is just you, make sure you're vulnerable enough to say, hey, I'm not good at that, and I really need to hear from someone else. Be vulnerable in your conversations with your other business owner friends, with your mentors, so that they can understand how to best serve you. Number two, you want to hire for future growth. Don't hire for your needs today. Hire for where you want to be tomorrow. Hire for where you want to be in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. Because if you're hiring for where you are today and you're not where you want to be, you're going to quickly outgrow that person. You're going to outpace them, and it's not going to be a beneficial situation for you, and you're going to find yourself in that hiring fast position. And then finally, I want to recommend that you hire for purpose. Hiring for purpose is something that's incredibly important for small business owners, simply because oftentimes we don't have the money. We don't have the money to say, hey, I can pay you all of this cash if you come and run and grow my business. So you need to make sure that the people that you're bringing in truly believe in your vision, truly believe in your brand, and truly believe in what the potential could be. So they may not get the earnings potential that they deserve today, but if they really believe in what you're doing, if they believe in your purpose of your company and your mission, then they'll be fine, because they know that they have the payout on the back end. Secondarily, I want to make sure that as you are scaling, and this is something that the Lit Bar is going through right now, make sure you have the right systems in place. The systems being accounting and finance, so that, again, we've talked about this before, you can understand your true cost of doing business, and you can forecast, and budget your staffing, your inventory, your service, your technology, whatever you need to grow your business. You need to make sure that you're tracking it in systems. And then finally, you need customer service. I cannot mention this enough. I cannot encourage you to make sure that your customer service is on par with the best of them enough, simply because you can attract customers, but if your customer service isn't where it needs to be, you'll find yourself in this place. You'll find yourself in this dip. And scaling is all about that incline up. But make sure that you're preventing this dip that oftentimes results in poor planning and poor systems and poor customer service that really doesn't ladder up to the expectations that your customers have for you. And finally, in order to scale, you have to invest. You have to invest in your offensive strategy as well as your defensive strategy. You need to make sure that you're investing in your future. So what that means is, when you're hiring that person not only for today, but you're also hiring them for 12 months, you can come up with the long-term strategy that looks like growth for your business. And if you're going to be on the offense, you also have to be on the defense. So there's this idea, and again, this is one of those childhood elements coming back into the fold. I don't know if you all used to build like little castles and put a moat around it. And that moat is that thing that's separating you from the competition, that small little lake, that small little river that makes it just a little bit more difficult for someone to come and take your market share. So as you're growing your business, make sure that you're constantly driving your offensive strategy as well as your defensive strategy. And we'll get a little bit more into it on the next slide. But as it relates to hiring, my philosophy is just being the smartest person in the room should never be your goal. It should never, ever, ever be your goal. And I know that that's hard as a CEO. As a CEO, you have to put your ego to the side and say, no, my goal is actually to surround myself with people who are smarter than me so that I can get smarter. And that's the goal as a CEO, to make sure that you're, again, hiring for your weaknesses and hiring for your growth. So now that we're on the same page about needing the right people on your team to help you scale, let's get into the nitty gritty of some of these systems and what it means to invest long-term in your future. So I mentioned systems. Inventory systems and finance systems and customer service systems play an essential role in your long-term success. But also data. In order for any of these systems to work properly, you have to make sure that not only are you tracking the results and chasing the results, but that you're mostly recording them. And maybe you're not at the point in which you can invest in like this big mainframe system. That's totally fine. Microsoft Excel is totally efficient at allowing you to track your business and track your progress over time. So whatever you do, if you don't take anything else from this lesson today, make sure that every single thing that you are working on, every single thing that you're testing and learning, everything that you do needs to be tracked so that you can identify patterns that allow you to grow, patterns where you can see declines, patterns that allow you to build long-term efforts to drive your profitability and truly scale your company. And then next, investments. I've talked a little bit about making sure that you reinvest and making sure that you have a defensive strategy as well as an offensive strategy. And I want to just share this little tidbit. The first 4 years of the Lit Bar, I didn't pay myself. Me and my creative director, Roscoe, who's also my business partner, she also did not get paid. And I know that that's not something that a lot of people can do. And that's not the expectation. But I want to make sure that you're reinvesting the maximum amount into your business, because by reinvesting into your business, that allows you to aggressively look for ways to expand and protect the growth of your business. Every single year, especially if you're in a competitive market, there are going to be new entrants into the market. And so by investing in your long-term growth and reinvesting every dollar or as many as your dollars that you've made back into the company, it'll put you in this mindset of protecting what's there. And it'll put you in this mindset of optimization, which we're going to get into a little bit in a few minutes. But your job is to make sure that you're reinvesting your time, your dollars, and your community into the betterment of your business so that you can experience long-term growth. All right, we're on our final lesson, guys, growth. So the thing about scalability and growth is that oftentimes people think that they're interchangeable, and they're not. So scalability is really making sure that you have the manpower in terms of human capital, in terms of those systems, in terms of strategy to go the extra mile. But growth is a little bit different. And there are lots of ways to look at growth. Today, we're going to look at growth from the consumer landscape. But growth is this idea of it's tactical. Growth is more so these things that you should be doing to drive growth. And scalability is all about sustainability. Growth can be hyper-focused for a moment. Scalability is more long-term. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we drive growth within our customer landscape. So I know that you all have heard over time that the average customer needs to see or hear about your product anywhere from 7 to 21 times before they're comfortable making a purchase with you. And so in order to back that up, I want to call out this stat that it's 5 times cheaper to keep a customer than it is to attract a new customer. That's crazy. So again, it's 5 times cheaper to keep your current customer than it is to get a new one. And a lot of people are, again, we talked about this earlier, a lot of people are paying for their customers. A lot of people are running tons of digital ads and paying influencers, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, you need to get customers. But if you just think about the relationship between your current customers and then how much you have to spend to get a new customer, I think you would really understand why that customer service element is so incredibly important as it relates to nurturing your relationships with what you already have. Within business, there's this idea that, instead of focusing on tomorrow, you focus on what's right in front of you, and that's how you get to the growth. And I really think that you oftentimes have to do both. You have to think long term, but you have to make sure that you're also acting appropriately in the short term. So we're growing. We're going to try to keep our current customers, right? But also we're going to try to attract those new customers. And growth isn't accidental. It's incredibly intentional. It requires you to track those metrics. It requires you to make sure that you're testing and learning. It requires that you pay attention. It requires that you're doing a lot of customer listening so that you can actually have the proper feedback to drive your business. So when we think about growth from the customer landscape, the number one thing I want you to focus on is ambassadorship. Ambassadorship is this idea of making your customers your mouthpieces, making your customers your influencers, making your customers, and not even making them, inspiring your customers to be that influencer, inspiring your customers to talk so positively about their experience that they've had with your customers that they're willing to drive word of mouth for you. This is going to be the easiest, the fastest, and the most effective way to actually attract new customers. So you want to get your new customers from your old customers by nurturing the relationships with your old customers and really making sure that your current customers know the value that you're bringing to them and know that you appreciate them and know that there's room for them to be impactful within your business. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the feedback loop, but I want to make sure that you all are treating your customers as the prized possessions that they are. We grew up in this economy with this idea that the customer is always right. And I know that we've shunned that in recent years, but I want you all to understand the power that your current customers have in terms of helping you to grow your business. Secondarily, when you're thinking about your current customers, so you can either grow your business from new customers. Again, we talked about, increasing profit by adding new customers into the fold. So you can either grow your business from adding new customers, or you can add new offerings for your current customers. So how do you do that? Let's say, again, you have a pencil company and now you're pricing your pencils properly. But your best customers and your current customers, they already have pencils. They've already bought all your pencils. They haven't used all their pencils yet. How do you get growth out of your current customers? Well, that's where new offerings come in. And you want to make sure that as you're thinking about driving new offerings, that you're actually producing something that people want. There's nothing worse than a founder being too close to the business and thinking that they fully understand everything that the customer wants. No, again, you want to use data to drive your newness. You want to use data and understanding that this is what your customer wants and why they want it so that you can actually get early buy-in on any new offerings. So again, we want to drive ambassadorship with your current customers to get new customers, but then also we want to make sure that we're nurturing the relationship and driving new offerings for our current customers to make sure that you're able to retain them. Because again, it's 5 times cheaper to attract or to keep a new customer than attract a new one. Again, with your current customers, you want to make sure that more than anything, you're driving a feedback loop. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but a feedback loop is, hey, you sold that pencil. you don't want to just sell the pencil. No. It's not about that. It's about selling the pencil and understanding how that pencil was useful to them and building community around that pencil. Oh, this is the most comfortable pencil I've ever used. And you want people singing your pencil praises from the rooftops. So you want to try to build a community around your current customers and really extract that feedback to drive your business growth. And then finally, your only job is to optimize. That's what growth is all about. Growth is literally optimizing to get a little bit better every single day to make sure that you're listening to your customers, that you're producing the right products, to make sure that you're driving the right prices, to make sure you're reducing expenses. Your entire job as CEO or as a leader within your organization is to optimize, to try to figure out what should be tweaked along the way in order to get just a little bit better. So before we end this session, I want to talk a little bit about the customer life cycle. So again, we've talked about the relationship that your current customers have and how they can be impactful in your ability to attract new customers for not a lot of money. A lot of people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, millions of dollars every year trying to attract new customers. But if you nurture your relationship with your current customer base, your business could increase by up to 95% by just having an impactful relationship with them. So what does that look like? This little graph that you're looking at, it illustrates this idea of your current customer being so satisfied with their product that they're willing to drive word of mouth. And that word of mouth looks like them sharing it on social media, them literally just telling their friend in the car. Think about how many times you have told or sold your friend on a brand or a product and you didn't get paid for it. But you did it because you actually believed in the promise of that product. That product absolutely impacted your life in a positive way. That product made your life a little bit easier. It made you feel good. It was delicious. Whatever adjective you want to use, so many of us every day are driving word of mouth for brands. And you want to make sure that your customers are doing that for you. And the only way you can do it is by infusing the proper education that they need in order to really make sure that they believe in your product and they're really telling the value of your customer. So I think in order to drive that word of mouth, you want to make sure that that nurturing comes across in all of your points of contact with your customer. A message that says, take a picture and share it with your friends. You'll be surprised with how many people will engage in this word of mouth portion of your business by just reminding them or encouraging them. And so if word of mouth is done successfully, bam, you have a new customer. You have a new customer who now you have the opportunity to learn from them because everything is a feedback loop. If you notice on this graph, the arrows are pointing both ways because that new customer will then give your old customer or your current customer, they'll give them word of mouth. They'll tell them how they feel. And your job is to make sure that when you're interacting with your customers at every single touch point, you're trying to collect that feedback to get to this space that every CEO should live. And that is an optimization land. That's, again, how you're trying to make your experience better for your company because your customers are also your employees. So internally, how are you optimizing? How are you making sure that people have the tools that they need in order to succeed and to scale and to act autonomously? And how are you optimizing for your current customer base in the form of paying customers to make sure that not only are they satisfied, but they're willing to share that word of mouth? And this is how you grow. You grow by consistently driving your feedback loop. All right, so key takeaways really quickly, just from the top. In terms of driving profitability, you want to make sure you're eliminating the waste in your business. Again, make sure that you're watching out for those sneaky expenses that add up and ultimately take away from your profitability. Number 2, as you're scaling, you want to make sure you're giving yourself the tools to grow. Hire the right people, hire for your weaknesses, get the right systems in place, and track your growth. Track everything that you're doing, even if it's not growth. If it's something that's going wrong, track it so that you can understand the patterns of your business. And finally, as you are growing, use your current customers to attract new customers. That's attracting the new from the old, and make sure that your current customers are happy. Happy customers create more happy customers. I really appreciate you all for spending this time with me today. I hope that you learned a lot. I hope that I was able to articulate clearly what I meant in terms of being able to scale your business in a profitable way, and being able to be in this growth mode where you can attract new customers and keep your current customers. So number one, I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for spending it with me today. And yeah, again, I just want to say thank you to T-Mobile for Business and Magenta Edge. Again, every Thursday, ending April 1st, there will be a new workshop talking about the facets of small business. There'll be other teachers like myself who have scaled their companies and have a lot to teach. So I hope that you all go to tmobile.com/Magenta Edge for supplemental information and education, as well as to sign up for next week's workshop. So thank you all, and I hope you enjoyed it.